Welcome to the DWIT podcast. I'm your host, Taylor. Today is a special day. We have someone special flying in all the way from Canada. She is not only my mentor, my advisor, and most importantly, a friend. We've been on an incredible journey for the past 3 years. We've went through ups and downs. And today, we're here to have this amazing conversation. Natalie Evie is the relationship advisor for leaders, co-founder of the Relationships Code, and author, global speaker, and former executive director at Goldman Sachs. She provides practical, actionable, and strategies powered by deep insights into human nature to help leaders build meaningful relationships at home and at work. Now, please welcome Natalie.
Thank you, Taylor. I'm so happy to be here today.
We finally get to see each other.
Exactly. Third time in 3 years.
Yes. We've been on a journey,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a lot of stories to share.
Yes.
But before we start,
Mhm.
I want to share with the audience that I truly believe that everyone needs a Natalie in their life.
Oh, thank you. That's so
Yeah.
sweet.
Did I ever share with you how I found you?
I just know through referrals. What's the backstory?
So at that time, I was doing my EMBA program at Chinese University of Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, we had a lot of guest speakers. They were all great,
Mhm.
and I tried to attend all of them,
Mm.
but I missed one.
Okay.
And that one time was you being
Ah.
a guest speaker. So I had to go back and ask my classmates,
Right.
how was Natalie?
Mm.
Most of the reaction was like, she's amazing.
Mm.
And at that time, I was like, okay, sure. I had to see it to believe it.
Right.
But that was not when I first reached out to you. That was my first
Mm.
impression of you.
Okay.
Yeah. But before we go into that part, can you share, what do you usually talk about when you go to these MBA, EMBA programs?
I still remember that talk.
Yeah? Okay.
That was, thank you for sharing the feedback. I had no idea. Amazing is a very nice descriptive word to hear. I also felt that talk was amazing.
Yeah.
So in any of the talks that I do, right, especially with EMBA or MBAs, because you're more mature, you have career concerns, you have family concerns, a lot's going on in your life.
Yeah.
When I go into it with any topic or any audience, it's always going to be a combination of two things. One is, of course, the very practical part, the skill set part.
Yep.
And that's usually what most people focus on.
Yeah.
But
Agree.
the thing is, yes, and so we do a lot of that too. However, the other half, that's only half. The other half is the deep dive into what's going on inside of us,
Yep.
into our humanity, do we really understand ourselves and other people, right? So it's that insight that what makes us tick that's really, really interesting, because if you think about it, for example, even something so simple as public speaking,
Yep.
you can be taught all the skill sets galore. Just a few days ago, I had a very senior leader tell me at a networking event, and he's like, oh, you know what, you're such a good speaker, but I always feel nervous. No matter how often I do public speaking, I still feel nervous. And the thing is, most people don't teach you how to tackle nervousness when they talk about public speaking, but we talk about this, right?
Yeah.
That's half of the part of it. If you have the confidence and you have put it into perspective, you have that mindset shift, then everything just flows from there, right? So, but if you only do that mindset shift and you don't teach people how to actually do the thing, that doesn't work either. So that's why I go in and do. And that talk with your class, I still remember, because we went deep dive into the people part, into the fears and the concerns that people had about changing their careers, about the job market, and the questions that I got from that class was out of this world. So I really appreciate them too.
Yeah, I think it's because we went through a very special time because it was COVID.
Yes.
So we were all facing uncertainties in our life. And listening to such a powerful speaker, I feel like it really resonated with them and created different ideas for them. And I guess that's why the feedback was, she's amazing. So going to these programs, right, do you have any interesting stories to share?
It's funny you would ask that, because, I feel we're so lucky nowadays because we have social media and there are people that you never would have had the chance to keep in touch with, that it's so easy to keep in touch. So the other day I was on Instagram, and it was actually the first person I ever coached professionally had liked my post. I still remember this guy. He was from another school, the MBA program.
No problem.
And I was just, I'd always coached for many years, even when I was at Goldman. But, after leaving Goldman, this is the first person I took on as a client. And, I reached out to him on IG and the DMs. I said, hey, how are you doing and stuff? And at that time, we had coached him through this particular company he was setting up, and he was the C-level of that company. And then he went back to Russia.
Yeah.
And now this is 15 years later, he's back in that company in Korea. Okay. And then he started talking about how his time in between, there was a lot of challenges.
Yep.
And there's a whole story behind how he's now in Korea.
Yeah.
And he said all these years, one of the things that kept him going was remembering all the things that we had gone through in the coaching, and the encouragement I gave him, and the confidence in himself and believing in his own ability. And he would have me in his mind. And I just felt so amazed. Now you've put that word in my mind. I never expected to hear that.
Yeah.
And that was me 15 years ago. The way I coach now is even different from last year, because I keep pushing the envelope on my own self-development. And for someone to take the time to share this with me, I didn't ask him for any of that. I just felt very honored and privileged to be able to be part of someone's journey and be useful to them to get them where they need to be now. So I even asked him for a testimony. He said yes. I haven't reached out to him yet. So
I think it's really important, right, to get feedback, especially over so many years. And then they come back and tell you something because of what you've done 15 years ago.
Right.
I think that makes that like inside it feels different compared to just saying, oh, she's great,
Right.
But that was from the heart. I can feel it. I can feel that story was from the heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that makes what you do worthwhile. But you must have these kind of stories too, since you've been in basketball for so many years and now a coach as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've only recently started coaching this year as a basketball coach. I see the game differently now. I think my stage right now is a little bit different to your stage. I'm just kind of still discovering myself as a coach and how I see the game, how I approach the game, and how I influence my team on winning, or how to play a better team basketball. And with that kind of changed me as a person as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I see that echoing in your work now too. Because your role has changed.
Yes. Yes. I used to be a head down, work hard, don't ask for compliments or acknowledgments. But now I focus more on the bigger holistic view and break it down into small milestones and then work as a team and be more vocal. So that's kind of how I kind of develop myself as well.
Well, the funny thing is you said you never asked for acknowledgement, but you were acknowledged. You're the top salesperson globally recognized, right? Not everyone can achieve that.
So I guess it's great to have my advisor, mentor, and a good friend to be the first guest because she knows my life, right?
Right.
Yes. I was the global top sales at Expedia. I won't sugarcoat it. I was very happy.
Right. You should be.
Yes, but I've learned a lot along the way as well. And I think now being able to look back and how to become a ruthless salesperson, but switch that into a more of a team player is a big change. And I'm still learning and adopting to this new mindset. When I graduated from the EMBA program, I was really excited. Like, finally done, ready to move on. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had an idea, but I wasn't sure if I was good enough, if I'm capable. And being an athlete, I have this mindset of, all great professional athletes, right? They have a mindset of finding a coach when they need help.
Yes.
So at that moment, you popped up. I was like, okay, Natalie, she's amazing. That's all I remember, right? And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to reach out and see how she is. Because I wanted to see it, to believe it.
Right.
Do you remember our first conversation?
Yes. We were in this Japanese restaurant.
Yes. In Maonsan?
Yes.
Yes.
We actually ended up turns out we lived in the same neighborhood.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Yes.
I remember that conversation. I remember you laying out your plan that you wanted to be Mambo Man.
Yes, Mamba Man.
Mamba Man.
Mamba
Yes.
Man. Yeah. Yeah. So I remember that meeting.
Yes.
We sat there. I told you I wanted to be a public speaker. I wanted to influence different generations.
Yes.
And share my story. Right. And then I also told you Kobe Bryant is my idol. And I live and breathe Mamba mentality,
Right.
which is do whatever it takes to get to your goals.
Yes.
Yes. And because of that, we came up with the Mamba Man.
Yes.
But then we stopped. We stopped after our first meeting. We didn't start until a few months later. I have a version, but I also want to hear from you, your POV. Like, how come you didn't push for a second meeting, or how come you didn't ask for a follow-up?
There's something called coachable, and people need to be ready. And so if you're not ready to make that commitment to do what it takes to go for what you want in life, then that can't be pushed.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I didn't reach out. It has to come from you. And I have to say, that's one thing I really admire about you. In these 3 years.
Yeah.
And also, I have a very strong gut feeling instinct. And even though it seemed like we laid out this plan the first time we met,
Yeah.
I just felt there was something off. Timing, readiness, it just didn't click. And so if we were to move forward, it needed to be where that time and space, it was what was appropriate for that time. And it just didn't feel right. I knew it wasn't appropriate for that time. And if we were to continue that conversation, it'd be a waste of your time and mine, right? I want to do useful things. You want to do what it takes to do, what it takes to do useful things, not do what it takes just for the sake of doing. I'm not there to make you feel good or just to echo what you want to hear, right? My job is to give you clarity, uncover things that you don't see, or to push the envelope on things where you just need a push to get there, or just even to clarify overall, not to just echo what you want. And so if you weren't ready for it then we wait until you are ready. So I was so happy when you reached out again.
I'm actually very happy to hear that from you, because my point of view was I wasn't ready.
There you go. Yeah.
I wasn't ready at all. I think when I first reached out, I wanted to discover what's next.
Yeah.
But at that time, after our conversation, it wasn't very long, like an hour and a half. I kind of picked up that I'm not there yet to be a public speaker. I might have certain abilities, but I'm definitely not polished enough. So I took some time off, as in, back to my regular job, playing basketball, living my life. And then after a few months later, I felt ready. And that was when I reached out to you. And to be honest, at that moment, I thought I'm just going to hire a coach for my career advancement, development, whatever you want to say it, right? But boy, we went on a journey.
Yes.
I think if you ask me now, I would never say Natalie is my coach. She is my strategic advisor. She is my mentor. And most importantly, a good friend. Someone that I can share and talk to about anything that is going on in my life.
Yes.
Do you want to share how I landed my dream job? The whole process?
Yes, I still remember that. It's etched in my memory forever. Because we had worked on this other job where you got an offer and you accepted.
Yes.
And I saw red flags. And I was like, are you sure you were guys? And you're like, I mean, I appreciate this. You're like, oh, well, I've got you. Don't worry. And so I have confidence I'll be able to hack it. I'm like, yes, I know you've got me and we can handle it together. But still, you don't knowingly go into a situation like that. And then your dream job popped up. And I still remember you were feeling very anxious. And I wouldn't say confused, but yeah, it was just high level of anxiety. And, stop me if you, want to jump in here.
Yeah,
but
keep going first.
yeah, it was such a strong impression because And this is, it's one of those moments where you really see who you are. It's your values.
Yes.
Because part of it was, hey, this is my dream job.
Mm.
But this other job really fits into the career path that you had designed and we had worked on together
Yes.
that made sense at that time.
Yes.
And so this other job was interesting, but it didn't exactly fit that mold.
Yeah.
So that was number one. Number two was, it's going back to the core, like me, who am I as Taylor? Because I accepted this other job. I would feel guilty to now walk away from an offer I already accepted
Yep.
because that's a commitment.
Yep.
I'm sure your wife will be happy to hear that, right? So that you have these values.
Yes.
And then, so we worked it out. And I was like, I remember at one point, so traditional coaching is like, well, what do you think? How do you feel? So I remember when I was coached way back when, and there's some things where I was confused or I was anxious and I needed clarity. And then my coach would say, keep repeating, so what do you think? What do you think? I was like, damn it, if I knew, I wouldn't be asking you, right?
Yeah.
So there's some things where you do need to probe and you draw, and that's really powerful for you to realize yourself. Some things you could probe till hell freezes over and the answer's not there. So I actually remember that split second, that moment when I decided, you know what, I'm just going to give it to you. Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, it's kind of like, pulling you up by your collar. It's like, Taylor,
Yeah.
this is your dream company.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is a good job. And it's close to the path that you wanted. And it may end up being really bang on anyway, because you never know until you walk that path.
Yep.
And I said, if you don't go for these interviews, because the thing was going for the interviews, because
Yeah.
they called you for an interview.
Yeah.
I said, if you don't go for this interview, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life because you've been
I
waiting
remember
for this
that.
moment.
I
Yeah?
remember that.
And I was just like, you just need that slap in the face, pulling you up by the scruff. And I was like, just go for the interview and then see how it flows and let things fall into place and decide then. And you will have the clarity once you go through.
Yeah.
And I knew you were going to get the offer because we prepped so much for it. And you were functioning at a completely different level in terms of, interview-wise. So I didn't feel that was an issue at all.
Yeah.
Get the offer first, and then you decide, right?
Yeah.
And I remember you then calling me later. You're like, oh, yeah, I got it.
Yeah. I mean, I can still remember that month and a half when everything happened, right? So like you said, we prepped for another job
Yes.
for maybe 2 months
Yeah.
in between, on and off.
Yes.
I got that job, which was a great job. I mean, just to give more context, right? I was at Expedia before, in a travel company, third largest or one of the three largest company in the world, a travel company. And then I get a chance to go into still within the travel industry, but doing something completely different, which was regarding to loyalty programs.
Yes.
So I was expanding within my niche, which sounded great.
Strategic.
Yeah, but during the interview, I felt something was off.
Yes.
Something was off. Let's leave it like that. But I still signed the offer because strategically, I think we could overcome this.
We can.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, my dream company reached out. And like you said, you pushed, you encouraged, you influenced me along the way.
Right.
And we didn't really talk about it afterwards. I talked to you about should I go for it?
Yes.
And then we stopped. And then I just went for it because I was ready. Like, if I use basketball terms, I was in the best shape at that
Yes.
moment. I was ready.
So thankful to, I just realized in talking, big thanks to that other offer, because
Yes.
otherwise we wouldn't have, whipped that
Yes.
into shape, right? That was
Yes.
from application to the interview process to the job offer process, and then understanding the landscape there. That was a period of time. And I still remember I was you called me in a panic about this.
Yeah.
You messaged me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm about to go out with my family now. Everyone's in the car.
Yeah, yeah.
So I can, if you're okay with it, I was standing there in the garage. I'm like, hang on, Taylor needs me right now. And we had a 15-minute conversation.
Yeah.
And, then hung
And
up,
that
and the rest is
conversation
history.
was really because of my values.
Yes.
I signed the offer. By heart, I'm like, it doesn't make sense for me to go for another job. Of course, who knows if I can get it or not, but I was already picking the laptop, picking a phone number. I was embracing myself for this new role, but it's also my dream company. And like you said, if I don't do it, I will regret it for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
And it's these kind of moments that a lot of my clients that we coach through, because often it is these values and emotions that shape.
Yeah.
I've had moments in my life when I felt a certain guilt or emotion when I actually made the wrong choice.
Yeah, yeah.
Looking back, I'm like, oh, you know what? That actually was such a small thing that I was concerned about. And if I had someone else slap me in the face, like I slapped you the other day, right?
Yeah.
I would have made the right choice. And looking back, like, oh, thank God I went right instead of left.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm so glad that, we reached out.
Yeah.
Because I have, once in a while I have a client where they go left instead of right and they tell me after, I'm like, why did you do that, right? So we didn't, because you reached out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was open to you about my feelings, and I needed guidance at that time. Right. I needed someone to advise me. Yeah. And it's
because we had coached for a period of time, so I
Yes.
knew who you were.
Yeah.
I wasn't sitting there just like from my vantage point and my values
Yeah.
telling you what to do.
Yeah.
It wasn't me in the picture at all. It was all you.
Yeah.
Because I knew what your priorities are, what kind of person you are, what you care about, and what your goals are.
Yeah.
Your dream, your vision, and all of that. And I knew that this part of feeling guilty about it, because you're not going to that offer, would put them in a rut.
Yeah.
They'd have to restart the whole interview process. And you had, between acceptance and when the other company came calling,
Yeah.
there was already a period of time. See, now I can see the discomfort in your face already.
Yeah.
But you see, that's telling, and that's what I love about you, because you are a good person. And if you weren't that person, and you're like, who cares about them, right? Let me go somewhere else. That's not the kind of client that I attract.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't let those things sometimes hold you back.
Yeah.
Sometimes, right? Yeah. So, and they could, even if you went to that offer, like most likely after a couple of weeks, because we knew that the people part of it would be complicated, right?
Yeah.
And I do handhold clients successfully through these. So I knew we could hack it, as you said, but is it necessary? Dare to venture that there was more than 50% chance that you would decide to leave before probation. So if in terms of that, then what's the difference between, it's even better. It's kind of like if you know it's the wrong girl, and you set up the whole wedding, better to,
Call
part
it off.
now. Yeah, call it off now than to marry and then divorce,
Yeah.
a year later. So that's really the situation you were in. If it was like the perfect job and the perfect people, then that would be different
story.
again.
Yeah. I was living life for a little bit, working at my dream job,
Yes.
playing at the highest level basketball in Hong Kong, being in the best shape. Also meeting my then girlfriend, now wife, soon to be the mother of the baby. But everything changed with a step that I've done a million times. I tore my ACL. I was hoping to have the best season, but this injury started before the season even started. At that time, I was in the darkest moment of my life. And you were there with me along the way. Could you share with me what was going through your mind when I was going through this journey?
I remember when you first told me about it, but it was quite obvious to me that you weren't ready to really go into it. And so I waited. And as I usually do when you're not ready, sometimes I'll poke a little bit and see how you react. And then I'll prod over there. And then at one point you were ready and you opened up.
Yeah.
And I remember it took a few sessions, and of course we were texting as well. And this was a big moment for you because it was all about your self-identity. And you, professionally, you had upgraded and moved on, right? But that Mamba man part of you, I'm the pro athlete basketball player, right? It was so core to how you identified yourself, your self-worth and your self-value. And you weren't ready to let go. And I remember you had injured and you were still pushing yourself to play.
Yeah.
If you're my son, the conversation would have been different.
But
But you're my client, so.
let me share with you.
Yeah.
Right? I got injured in February. I started training with the team by August, September, without an ACL. I didn't go through the surgery. People thought I was crazy. I knew I wasn't ready,
Yes.
but I had to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that moment, I was still carrying that label.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the basketball player.
Yes.
I can do whatever. But I re-injured myself again.
Yes.
And that setback, that was another 3-month setback
Mm-hmm.
from my recovery process. And we worked extensively
Yes.
on this topic.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't really push me, but you were constantly telling me that it's okay to let go,
Mm-hmm.
but I just wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
But along the way, I think I was able to re-identify myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, I upgraded professionally.
Yes.
We went over the possibility of continued education.
Mm-hmm.
Doing my DBA now at CUHK. Being public speaking,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to, go back to EMBA and really give out a full enrichment workshop where
Yes.
we worked on extensively as well.
Yes.
And the recent hospital authority.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So share with me, how did you navigate me through that process? Obviously, I was hurt,
Yes.
right? It wasn't technical.
It wasn't technical. It was all inside.
Yeah.
And it's fear of the unknown, because when you let go of something that you identified so strongly with, then who are you?
Yes.
What is Taylor? Who is he? What's your existence? Do you even matter anymore? Because you mattered so much to the team.
Yeah.
If you look at it logically, though, I remember we had this conversation, time-wise, you can't handle all that.
Yeah.
You can't excel at basketball and your job and DBA, and then you were getting married.
Yes. Yes.
And you still have to eat and sleep,
Yeah.
right? And go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And so it's physically not possible to do everything. And, and then remember we went through this you don't have to give up basketball, but does it have to be as a player? Can it come in other forms?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you didn't take that step, you couldn't grow further to the next step, because you want to be, as you said, a public speaker.
Yep.
How do you make time for all of that? And then now you're going to be a father soon. And so, of course, this is now a little bit away from your injury, but would you have time for your son or daughter? And so until you and this is true for all of us, some things, you can't welcome the new things until some of the old things you have to create space for it.
Yeah.
And so that was that struggle. But I understand, because since you were 15, basketball was your thing.
Yeah.
This is your value to the world. This is what makes you special,
Yeah.
is what you thought. But it's not the basketball that makes you special. It's you who is special. And the basketball was part of the experience that shaped you to be who you are today.
It's actually giving me like goosebumps right now. just thinking about that process, like I was in so much pain, like emotionally. I didn't know what to do. Right? The conversation we had, I can still remember it. I was just keep referring back to, so what should I do with my life?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like everything surrounding my life was because of basketball. And because of this injury, I'm nothing now. That's when I started coaching the company team.
Yes.
And I think because of coaching, I was able to see a different perspective. I used to be the number one player, or the star player, or even just a regular player, and never thought about the coach's perspective on how a team player should be to help the team win. People always say, like, you need a team to win a championship. I never knew that until I became a coach. And I think that was one of the influence that you kind of guided me through it along the way. How about any interesting stories that you want to share that you see in me, for example,
Right.
on how I was able to really communicate with you, share my feelings?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. takes a lot of courage to share for anyone.
Mm.
And especially, I mean, my practice, or I should say my clientele, is probably 50-50 male and female.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the guys that I coach, they've been trained since childhood to ignore your feelings,
Yeah.
to shut down that part of yourself.
Yeah.
And so number one is you don't even recognize your feelings so much, which means there's this huge part of you you don't understand. And then secondly, let's say you understand it to a certain point. There's no one to talk to, and you have to open up and be vulnerable. So I have to give you a lot of credit that in your pain, you opened up and you were strong enough to be vulnerable. And I know that sounds weird, but you actually need courage
Yeah.
to show your weak side, which is what vulnerability is.
Yeah.
And to completely open up and go, like, okay, Natalie, have a go at it. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the, the child inside of me. This is the pain part of me. This is the weak part of me. So you really have to, yes, I was there for you, but it was you.
Yeah.
You did all the heavy lifting.
Mm.
And if you didn't take that step, you couldn't get over that and heal emotionally. Like, I
Yeah.
know physically you were healing, but
Yeah.
emotionally,
Yeah.
tend to make room.
Yeah. I remember during our session, you actually talked about while the time you were at Goldman,
Mm-hmm.
you shared that they all need, when you get to a certain level, you need a coach
Yes.
because you cannot see it within the bottle.
Yeah. So
Something like that, right?
this is a term I heard from another coach recently. You can't see the label from inside the bottle.
Yes.
So, the best coaches have coaches. I have a business coach. I have a spiritual guide, right? So who coaches me? So, and as a pro athlete, we all know that it's common sense that the top athletes have a top coach.
Mm.
And
Yes.
not that they become a top athlete, therefore they don't need the coach anymore. Like, that seems ridiculous to us. But the reason why an athlete would need a coach is the same reason why we need a coach in our regular lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you've fallen down, you can't pick yourself up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's that mentality that you have. That's part of do what it takes.
Yeah.
That, this is the model that works there and you became the top player. Then this is the model that you look for here to do what it takes to make it work for you.
Yeah.
And that includes the courage to speak up and open up and share.
Yeah. I truly think because I was an athlete. Well, I am still an athlete, just
Yes.
not top tier. Okay. In order to excel in your profession, you need guidance. You need help.
Yes.
Right. Sometimes it's emotionally, sometimes it's strategically, sometimes it's technically.
Yes.
Right. And I recently actually saw a reels on Instagram. Let me ask you, do you know why elevators have mirrors?
Never thought of that before.
So when the first elevator was invented, right, they didn't have any mirrors. And at that time, it took a long time for it to get to floor to floor. Right? So people got bored and they didn't know what to do. And they were complaining a lot. But because of technology wasn't that advanced, they couldn't make the elevator faster. So they put in mirrors. They put in mirrors because it would distract you. Right? Imagine going to an elevator, you would definitely look at yourself.
Yes.
So I think this is such a great example on why sometimes it's not the technical or the strategic knowledge that you have in a person to help to solve a problem, but it's psychological.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's an
And
interaction.
I think what we did, we went through that part. So that's why I don't consider you as my coach. You're more than a coach. You're my advisor, right? When I need help, I come and ask you. But when I need someone to talk to, you're like a friend, like a mentor. Yeah. So this is how I would consider our journey so far, and how I look at you as someone that helped me along the way in those darkest moments. Yeah.
And you get out of that faster, right? And that's why, as you were saying, the largest companies like my old company, Goldman, when you get to a certain level, they give you a coach because the ROI,
Yeah.
it's an investment.
Yeah.
Think about it. As a leader, you're making decisions that impact a lot of people. impacts the bottom line.
Yeah, of course.
Business.
Yeah.
And so one wrong decision or one less than optimal decision has a huge impact.
Yeah.
And since you can't see the label from inside the bottle, when you have that person to be your other pair of eyes or ears and to sort of guide you, shape you, and slap you in the face when you need it,
Yeah.
or give you that push, then that makes all the difference. And so a lot of people who don't reach out, like that dark period can take a long time. I've had a very dark period myself. I once took 1 month off of work because of that.
Yeah.
But I had my coach, my guide, to be there with me, to help me walk out.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons it's so important for me to have this passion to help people get out of it too. So kudos to you for reaching out for help. A lot of people don't.
I needed it. I was lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got out of it so quick, right? So, yeah.
I'm still recovering. I'm still adjusting. Maybe one day I'll go back to be a professional athlete.
Yes.
Yeah, that's still the goal.
When it makes sense for you.
When it makes sense for me.
Yes.
Yes.
You've got a lot of other things on your plate right now.
Yes. And I think this whole process, this whole journey will turn to the person who I am today.
Yes.
So Natalie, I feel like I re-identify myself. I reset and restarted my engine and have a new purpose in my life. Imagine I'm not here today. How would you describe Taylor today compared to 3 years ago on our first meeting?
I hope you're not unhappy with this, but from
I'm
how
ready.
I see it is,
I'm ready.
when I first met you, you're more of a boy, and now you're a man. You've matured. You are very focused on your goals and how to get there. And you also have this, I really don't like the word agility, but this adaptability and flexibility, which is actually wisdom. Because a lot of people, when they set the goal, then they feel they're really rushed to get there. Or else they set a goal, but you know how we worked, we set the big, hairy, audacious goal, but then we set the smaller goals and milestones to make sure we're on track. And then we pivot when it makes sense, when you have new data points, when the situation changes, right? And a lot of people aren't able to do that well. And even if I'm there with them or they have someone, they may not be comfortable with it. But you're very comfortable with it. And that you have to give yourself a lot of credit, right? Now, the internal stuff is what stops us from being able to achieve that. And, you know, of course, we have the advantage of we've been working together for 3 years now. Yeah, so the internal stuff, we've worked out a lot. So it's almost like that stuff, we've like been there, done that, taken care of a lot of it. So it's really just, you know, and I actually talked about you the other day to someone else. Like, it's just like we come in, you know, we update, set the strategy, and then what's the execution plan, right? And then strategy, execution plan, you know, what are the new factors coming into the play that we have to take care of or factor in? And then do we need to adjust? And then we execute. It's flawless. It's awesome, right?
Yeah, so I think that's more like we game plan.
Yes.
We strategize.
Yes.
We do a walkthrough, like basketball.
Yes.
And then I go out and I play the game.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So I agree. I think now that you say it like that, I feel like, okay, it's really similar to me prepping for a game.
Yeah.
I think I shared with you, right? For one of our sessions, I was able to let go of basketball because when I go to hospital authority and do a speech, I prep for a month.
Yes.
It's like training, like 2-3 hours every day about the deck, the presentation, the style, the content. And then when time comes, it's like when the whistle blows, that 45 to an hour, all the spotlights are on you. Yeah.
And one thing also I'd like to share is, you know, I help a lot of people with their presentations and talks because again, it's all about understanding how people think and how they feel and then designing it for that. And so, you know, you come to me with your deck and you have all these great ideas and stuff, but then sometimes we rework the flow.
Yes.
And we rescript parts. And you know what? You don't bring your ego to it because you're so focused on the goal. And the goal is flawless execution. And the goal is I'm going to be, or I am, a kick-ass presenter. So there's no like discomfort, like, oh, Natalie's like, you know, throwing away this part. She wants to message. You're just so like, okay. And then we talk about why this works this way, why it doesn't work that way. And there's no discomfort around that. You're just so focused. And that focus, I'm guessing, is the athlete part of you.
Yeah.
And that's where people succeed.
Yeah. Because you can game plan all you want, but once you're on the court, it's so different.
Yeah.
The ref could be different because
Yes.
because of the ref, the game could be played very differently, right? Because your teammate might get injured,
Yeah.
right? You might be in foul trouble. So I think a lot of things play into a factor where you just have to be very flexible. And when you come in with a perspective and you hear another point of view, that changes everything.
Right.
Yeah.
You're just so focused on what works.
Yeah.
And you know, one more thing is, and not everyone does this, you always make sure to grab me. Like, you grab me for before to strategize or game plan, and you grab me after to debrief. And then we psychoanalyze or analyze the entire thing,
Yeah.
and then see where the successes are,
Yeah.
and then where the room for improvement is. And that's where you keep pushing the envelope strategically that way. Again, that's why you move forward so fast and so accurately,
Yeah.
because you build that in.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of blushing
Yeah.
right now, but I think okay, I wouldn't say all you, because I put in a lot of work as
course.
well, right?
Yes.
But I think the me now is the true Taylor that is inside of me, right? Coming from a Western and Eastern background, I'm like, sometimes I get confused. My parents are very traditional, but I grew half my life in a Western country.
Yes.
So sometimes I'm very vocal, but a lot of times my traditional value just holds me back. And I think now I'm at a point where I'll be vocal when it's needed. But at the same time, I will pay respect to the situation where it's needed. Like your example, right? You come in, you tell me that, hey, I still remember one of the first few sessions we had, I came with you with an idea or interview pitch of self-intro. I don't know if you remember.
I remember that, yes.
I don't know if you remembered. Basically, your facial expression was saying that you're a global top sales. Is this how you present yourself?
Now I'm blushing.
That is true. I mean, we
Right.
went through that process.
Right.
Yeah, and we needed time to get to know each other.
Yes.
And I think that's so important in what you do as a professional.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I always tell people, like, I'm very direct because you're paying me to do that.
Yep.
If I'm just going to sit there and go, oh, hey, that's pretty good, Taylor, then you'll feel good, but you're not going to get the result you want. So if you're committed to the result you want, sometimes those messages are necessary, or else we could be sitting there for 2-3 hours just making you feel good. Right. But, and that goes to the point where, I once, I think earlier, a couple of months ago, I found this copywriter that I thought, oh my God, this is like the best copywriter I've ever come across. And I used to own a skincare brand, so I've worked with a lot of people in that space. And when I reached out to him, spoke to him, and I was like, you know what, I do this kind of stuff for my clients all the time.
Yeah.
And it's effortless. And they're always like amazed, and they're so happy with it. I can't do it for myself. And he's like, you know what? I can't even do it for myself. That made me feel so, he's like, you know what? Because you're too close to it, there's too much information. And so that, I was like, I gave myself permission to suck at doing it for myself. And it's the same for you. You're global top sales, but when it's you're selling, it's different from you're selling the product or the company.
Yeah.
And you're too close to it, and there's too much information.
Yeah. That was exactly what you told me. Like, you're too close to it. Right? You're too close to yourself. You don't know what you should talk about. Right. You always say, I put in so many things about me that I want to talk about in the intro, where it's just too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we keep talking about that even for your presentations.
Even to nowadays.
Yes.
I think it's a constant learning.
Yes.
It's a process. We're all learning together.
Yes.
Yeah. If we were to go back in time, 3 years ago, would you do anything different along our journey?
You know what? I would actually say no, because I feel that throughout this journey, that dance, that fluidity, we respected that. And, coaching is, you have to respect the person's journey.
Yep.
And the fact that we're still working together after 3 years is amazing. And the fact that, as I evolve, you've evolved. And I always say, I'm not some expert saying I'm perfect. I'm 3 steps ahead of you, right? And of course, it takes 2 to tango.
Yep.
And your openness and receptiveness makes it all work. And also because we're both very practical people.
Yeah.
So we've dived into the why are you stuck here?
Yeah.
And then we get you unstuck,
Yeah.
right? The human part of you. And then we also really focused on the practical part. And that's how I am. And I know that's why clients come to me, right? Because you can't just go woohoo, like, oh, this is how I feel and I want to feel better, right? It has to move you somewhere.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, if you're like, oh, rah, rah, like, testosterone filled, we got to go somewhere. But then that brings up the question of, are you true to who you really are? Or are you think you're who you are, but you're not because you're still have all these layers of what society tells you should be.
Yep.
Or like, because I must be the basketball player and not the coach or not the, the horrible word has been. Right? And so, can you keep recreating and letting go of those layers? Like you were saying, this is powerful. You were saying, I'm now who I really am. I'm now Taylor.
Yep.
And that's the goal. Because when you know who you really are, that means you shed all these like parental expectations, peer pressure,
Yep.
society, right? Or even like, when I was at Goldman, one of the things that triggered me to leave was when my daughter was born. And I was not happy for most of the time through those 10 years. And, but I, my job was quite special because from the day one when I was at Goldman, I didn't have any peers. So I was junior, but I was hired to support the regional head of this big division. And basically from day one, I was in on all the meetings. I did the head count, I did the budgeting, I handled recruiting. I knew everyone's salary. I knew why they were paid so much or so little. I knew who was getting promoted, who was getting fired, who was like laid off, who had performance issues, and why. All those meetings where they discussed this. I remember this time when I had my own transition. In the beginning years, I don't know how many years, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I would look out of the floor, get out of a meeting, I'd be like, oh, I would look at people, they would not know I was looking at them. You should leave now. You're not being treated fairly, right? You should be paid more, or you should ask for something. And I couldn't say anything.
Yep.
Or I would know who was going to get fired, and I couldn't say anything. But you know what? There's this one point when I transitioned. I remember that point where one day I was like, oh, yeah, of course they were not the ones who would get promoted. Of course they would be paid less. And I remember thinking, oh God, I went to the other side. And that's partly why I'm so good at what I do, because I see, and then later on I went to HR.
Yep.
So everyone thinks like I'm the HR person. I was like, HR? Like, no, that was like the last part of it. The entire time I was seeing things holistically. So I see from the HR point of view.
Yep.
I see from the manager, head, leader point of view. I see from the junior person point of view. So whoever comes, and whoever they're dealing with in their career, do they have the nasty boss, do they have whatever, or they feel like, oh, life is not fair. I see it from 360, up, down, sideways, what that looks like.
You had the entire database.
The entire database, and that's where the strategy comes from.
Yeah.
And that's where the understanding comes from. And then you jump out and you become an entrepreneur, and you have all of that. And so that's why with you and with most of my other clients, I wouldn't do anything differently, because if that coaching has worked, and to me it's all about work, and that's why in my branding right now, it's relationships at work. At the end of the day, it's your relationship with yourself,
Yep.
which is what you worked on. It's your relationship with the other people around you, whether it's at work or at home. And you know what? If home isn't working, work is not going to work. And if work isn't working, home is not going to work.
Yeah.
So I recently went to Toronto to do a keynote. And I'm the president of a business association called Asia CEO for Canada, for the Canadian chapter. And there was one member that I met, and he is a portfolio manager, and he was telling me that it's not even a joke. He was making a joke, but it's not a joke. He said the inside joke for the industry is that if you know a portfolio manager is getting divorced, you pull all your funds out. Because you know he's going to crash and burn, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. We can't cut someone artificially, right? I can't go to you, Taylor, and go, oh, we're going to talk about career only. Oh, you have issues with you're feeling not good about the fact that you're not going to be the basketball player anymore. Sorry, we don't cover that, right? Or you have this big life change and you're going to be a father and you're whatever, and how do you manage all that? No, we don't talk about that. Of course not. Every single session that people come, it's like, we're going to talk about work. We're going to talk about them, the people they supervise. We're going to talk about their clients, their pitches, and then we're going to go talk about their wife, their husband, their kids, their mothers, their fathers, aging parents, their health, all of that. And one thing is, and I was surprised because last time we spoke, I thought that this didn't apply to you. But I was sharing with you that the clients of mine who are married, they always end up telling me, and it doesn't matter if they're man or woman, they always say, oh, you know what? I want to talk to you about this today. I actually talked to my wife or husband about it, and they said, ask Natalie. I'm like, So, I usually don't have issues with clients like they're investing in the coaching and their spouse objects to it, because they see that they change, that they're calmer, they're happier, they're less emotional, they're a better spouse to their spouse. And their things at work are moving and working out. So they're really happy they're in coaching. It's always like, ask now. Maybe that should be my tagline.
I really think you should consider that.
Right.
Because in my marriage, my wife often say this, why don't you ask Natalie?
Yes. And I never knew this. You never told me.
Yes.
Other people tell me. And so when you told me, I was so surprised. Really, you too? You're
Yeah.
bitten by the bug.
Yeah.
So
I think this is why I truly believe that everyone needs a Natalie in their life. From my heart.
Right.
So I think this podcast is about do whatever it takes.
Yes.
Also DWIT. So I have this segment where I want to ask my guests, what is your DWIT moment?
I've had a lot of them. I think the one that comes now, because we were talking about earlier, is my leaving Goldman.
I want to hear that.
Yeah, that was tough. Because I grew up in Canada. My family was there. And Goldman was 10 years of my life. And in the middle, there was a time when my father was running between China, Hong Kong, and Canada. So he was kind of around. And he actually came down with acute leukemia at one point. And my boss at that time was so understanding and caring. And he would let me just disappear for half a day, because I was the only one in Hong Kong of my family, to go take care of my father, who was in the hospital. And at that time, they told me he would die anytime, right? So, I was so thankful for that. And then when I had my first divorce, because I had 2 divorces, and then they were both abusive relationships, unfortunately. But when I had my first divorce, and I fell into not diagnosed depression, at that time I made a choice not to take medication, even though, of course, there's definitely a place for medication. And if that's something you need, then you should definitely do that.
Yep.
Okay. But it was a personal choice. And I took a month off work. And, I remember I had a colleague who found me. I was actually sitting in the corner of a meeting room. I just couldn't function anymore. And at that point, because then, of course, he told my boss. I was trying to hide it.
Yep.
And then so they gave me a month off, and I was so thankful for that. So, Goldman saw me through a lot of ups and downs, and it was my only family in Hong Kong. And I had a lot of friends that I made during that time. But it wasn't the right job for me. The latter half, when I was in HR, I made it meaningful for me. I started speaking then. I overcame my huge fear of public speaking, and I was doing something meaningful, because that public speaking was giving back to others to help them and to lift them up. And but I was physically completely drained, and I needed to do something about it. And when my daughter was born, I remember she was newborn. I was holding her in my arms. And I started crying. I said, you know what? I want her to choose the path that's right for her. And because I was recruiting all these people, like throughout Goldman, I was recruiting, even though my job wasn't only recruiting. in the last part, I was really focused on recruiting students into the company. And all these eager students, and I would ask them, so why do you want to work at Goldman? And then you have the story, I'm like, oh, because it's Goldman Sachs, right? So first of all, if anyone's listening to this podcast and that's what you want to do, that does not win you immediately deduct points, okay? You have to be more specific, but today is not about, interviewing, okay?
They will need to reach out to you.
Yes, but in any case, it's, and I always think, do you really know what you're getting into? Now, I have ex-colleagues who, they love that work. They were born to do this stuff in finance, right? And I really admire them. They're so smart. I wasn't. And so, I wanted my daughter to know that there are other options out there, and to not do it because everyone thinks it's the sexiest, and to not do it because it makes the most money.
Yeah.
I wanted her to discover what her true calling was. And so at that moment, that was the moment I decided, you know what, if this is what I want for you, then mommy has to do something about this, right? Then I need to step out of my comfort zone and take that scary step, because on my father's side, it's a family of entrepreneurs, but I grew up needing a huge sense of safety. So I never imagined going out onto my own. The only problem was I recognized that for me to do what I want to do in the way I want to do it, I needed to do it my way, means I need to strike out on my own. And that was scary. But we moved into a new expensive apartment. There's a whole backstory I won't share on that. More expenses because of a newborn.
Yep.
So at that peak of you shouldn't move. And also that year, Goldman had a record earnings year. And I remember when, yes, yeah, and I was doing really well. And I remember when I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna leave. And my boss, or actually it was my boss's boss, actually said, you know what, you can just stay till the end of the year and get your bonus. And the thing is, that would be the logical thing to do, but it wasn't the right emotional thing to do, because inside I knew that this would work out, but logically it was stupid and crazy. And I knew if I didn't make a move then, I would never make that move. I would get sucked into it, and I was actually being headhunted to other firms for an even higher position. And then me being me, because I'm kind of loyal, I share that kind of thing, like, oh, like if they gave me a higher position, and then I feel like I owe it to them, and I'd have to stay for longer. And I would lose
the value.
The value. So I would lose the courage to leave. And I knew it was now or never. And the funny thing is, so I pulled the plug halfway through the year, didn't take the bonus. Damn it, I didn't take the bonus. And then I remember a year later, I went to Singapore to visit, and I met with one of the MDs that I had worked with before. And then I told him, he's like, oh, so why did you leave? And I told him, I was like, wait a minute, you're the one. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, we had our MD meeting. We're like, this crazy girl, like, she decided to leave halfway. She was in line for a huge bonus, and she left. It's crazy. She left halfway through the year. I'm like, yeah, that's me. I felt really bad at that. I was like, oh, God damn it, I should have taken that bonus after all. Yeah. But you know what? If I did, then it's not no looking back. I would have looked back. And sometimes you have those moments where you have to do what it takes. You have to grab that moment when you know it's your dream. You have to listen to your gut and let your gut override your fear.
Yeah, I agree. I think at that moment, it wasn't just a gut feeling. It was a holistic view, but made into a quick decision. And that decision made you to do whatever it takes to provide a better life for your daughter, right? Have a different future and just see life differently.
Yeah, and that's clarity.
That's clarity.
That's what coaching is all about.
Yes.
And when you're clear, it's not courage, it's logic.
Yeah.
Right? It's when all the emotions get in the way that you're afraid to move forward.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So I want to say thank you again for being my first guest, flying all the way in from Canada. And throughout this podcast, we've learned so much, right? Learned about our journey, my growth. But at the same time, you were able to share to the audience where your perspective on what people say coaching should be, your own way of to do whatever it takes to help your clients.
Yes.
So we really appreciate that. I hope that in the future, more and more people can feel it, and be influenced by what you do and by watching this. Natalie, thank you for sharing your DWIT moment. Can you share with the audience how can they reach out to you?
Sure, of course. Very easy. On LinkedIn, I'm the only Natalie Evie out there. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, and soon there'll be YouTube as well as TikTok. I'm also coming out with our first ever group coaching program called Relationships at Work. And this is after many years of people asking, do I have a group program? Because I love the one-on-one that we do where we deep dive.
Yep.
And I also love the speaking that I do where I reach wider audiences. But I always thought it would be great if we could have groups of people where we can still coach them through, but I can't clone myself.
Yeah.
So that's where the Relationships at Work program comes in. I'm so excited, I can't wait.
Can't wait to see a new post. Thank you, Natalie, for coming again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching the episode of the DWIT podcast. If you want to continue the journey with me, please subscribe, like, and comment below.